Welcome to the program, Saluting the Art and Legacy of Timothy Reed. My sister died in her sleep on February 5th, 2021. Her mission completed, that of speaking in her novels for thousands of those afflicted with schizophrenia who could not speak for themselves. Over the next hour, you will hear from those who encouraged Timothy as she made her journey through life. They will be interviewed by our father, Ishmael Reed. Actress Malika Iman will read excerpts from her novels. Carla Blank, who contributed enormously to the welfare of Timothy, will read from a letter sent by her publisher, Will Balliet, reviews of her novel, and from Rome Neal's adaptation of her novel, Showing Out. Rome Neal will talk about his efforts in adapting the novel, and Christiana Blaine, the star of Showing Out, will talk about this theatrical work. Armando Nieto will talk about her work with social agencies, and Georgia Fraser will remember her as a Buddhist. If you wish to make a donation to the publishing of the novel she left behind, Split in Two, you will find the donation box at neweureka.org. Music is Come Sunday, the Ishmael Reed Quintet, featuring Carla Blank, Ishmael Reed, and David Murray. Now to the introduction of Ishmael Reed. Ishmael Reed is the author of novels, plays, poetry, and nonfiction. He has received prizes in every category. The Terrible Four is the third novel in Reed's Terrible series, published by Baraka Books in Montreal in June of 2021. His newest poetry collection, Why the Black Hole Sings the Blues, poems 2007 to 2020, Dalkey Archives Press, was released November 2020 and includes his poem, Just Rollin' Along. He received the John D. MacArthur Genius Award, and his 10th and newest play, The Slave Who Loved Caviar, received a virtual reading in March of 2021 and will be produced at Off-Broadway's Theater for the New City in December of 2021. Ishmael Reed.
Thank you, Tennessee. I want to start off the program with two people, my brother, Benny Reed Jr., and Sidney Clifton, who tell us about some of the early years of Timothy. And I'll start off with Benny. She was a visitor. She lived in her household, Reed family. Isn't that right?
That's right. I'm Benny Reed. I'm Ishmael's brother. And Timothy, I'm her uncle. And also, Timothy also has another uncle named Vincent Reed. And Timothy has a niece named Linda. And I know I can remember Timothy very well back in the early 70s. She was a young kid. But remember back in the early 70s, she came to live with us in Buffalo. Okay. She was just like part of the family. She was part of the family with us. We all lived together. We had great times together. She was just another member of the family. She was always a joyful kid. because she was younger, we was older than her. We got her in the right spots, where to go, where not to go, who to see, who not to see. And she looked upon us as like a brother and sister. It was just like a family. And she was very happy living with us. And we had a lot of good and joyful times together. Timothy loved the party. And we loved to party with her because she loved to joke around while we was partying. She was basically the life of the party. And you can say that, later on, she went to school there. It's just like, we had a good time. She went to school and everything. She did great in school. But you can tell, like, so she had a void there. Something was like bothering her. We kept asking her, is you all right? Are you happy? Yeah, I'm happy. I love you guys. I love you. I'm happy. Well, there's something's bothering you, right, Timothy? Yes, something's bothering me. He said, my mother, which is her grandmother, said, well, what's wrong? You can talk to me. She said, well, I miss my mother. She missed her mother, Priscilla. Of course she missed her mother. She loves her mother. That's her mother. But Priscilla, her mother, was in New York. See, Buffalo is further away from New York. And she longed to go back to be with her mother in New York. So,
you guys earlier too, in the 1965 year.
Right. So she went back to be with her mother. And she realized she was in an environment, the family type environment. It's a totally different environment for her. By her being young, going to a big city like
her mother's people. Her mother was very dependent upon her. And
that's what I was just trying to say. Your mother was very dependent upon her. That's too much weight for a kid. She's young to have all that weight upon her, just like that. Because
Okay, well, listen. Are there any other memories you have? What about you guys ate well, and you were
well. The memories I had with her is that we used to go out a lot. We used to go out a lot. We used to like visit, like the art galleries, museums. She loved that. She loved art, and she loves to. She loves to travel. We took on some trips with us. She enjoyed that, because she was younger at the time, and we had a great time with her. And then my wife first met her. She fell in love with her because she stayed with me and my wife for a while. I don't know if you know that, Ishmael, but she stayed with us for a while. And the time being while she was with us in Buffalo, it was joyous for her for the time.
You have any memories you want to share before we move on?
What memories? I miss her laugh. I miss her laugh and her smile. Because some days I can be down, and she can say something to lift me right up. She had that good joyous spirit about her to lift me right up. She sure did.
I appreciate that.
Yes. No problem.
I'm going to move on now to Sydney Clifton.
Okay.
You're the daughter of the great poet, Lucille Clifton.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, I'm Sydney Clifton, and
Hold on a second.
okay.
He was the Emmy nominated producer and president of the Clifton House, which is a landmark. Is that correct? In Maryland.
Yes,
That's
correct.
I remember all these people I used to know. They're having streets named after them and dormitories. And I used to hang out with these people. I used to party. These people I used to party with. They got all kind of institutions named after them. Like Pietri right there. Party. But anyway, he's a producer and president of the Clifton House, a nonprofit writer and artist workshop and residency, space centered at her childhood home in Baltimore, Maryland. Now, Sydney, Timothy and her mother lived with you guys for a while.
She did. And this was while we were still in Buffalo. I remember, here's what I remember. I was 5, she was 4, my sister was 3, my brother was 2, my mother was pregnant. So there was a bunch of us at the house. What I remember most about Timothy are the ways that she interacted with us. I remember her round, beautiful brown face. I remember her smiling. I remember her paying attention. This was a kid who was paying attention. She was a watcher. I mean, and that's something that really stood out for me. She was happy when she was with us, and I was very protective of her as the oldest of all these kids. And so for us, she was just this is we figured it was like our cousin who was staying with us. It was not a question. The fact that she looked more like my mom than any of us did really made me a little insecure, I gotta say. But she really she seemed like family. I remember her smiling, and I remember her my sister Frederica, who has since passed away. We all like to draw, and so Timothy liked to draw as well when we were small. Um, and she was just always someone who was there. She was joyful, but when at that time much more quiet, I think, than I'm hearing described. Um, it may have been because there were so many of us also, but I know that my mom was also protective of her. um, Priscilla had been what I thought was my babysitter for the longest time. She was staying with my parents, so she's someone I was attached to. But I also know when she left, and then Timothy was with us, there was something not quite right. But I was a child; I didn't know what that was. What I did know was that Timothy was with us. She was family. She was safe, and that's all there was to it. That's what I remember, and that's what was important.
Thank you, Sydney. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now we're going to move on to uh, Timothy lived with us for a few times. She always returned to New York to after her mother's request that she be her caretaker. And when she came to us, she hadn't that much schooling because she was homeschooled. And we got her in a private school and showed her intelligence to a famous educator, Herb Cole, who said that she was the fastest learner he ever encountered. And we helped her learn how to read and write. I'd throw these complex editorials at her and tell her to come back and tell me every word, his definition. We finally found that she had this great talent. And when she was 16, she published for the first time in the Berkeley Bar. Do we have that, Miles? There you go. This is her first publication. And it's just a fantastic piece. And belies her age because she talks about culture. She talks about Black studies. She says, for example, hearing the news about Black studies being cut out made me angry, but I still didn't have enough facts. So a friend of mine filled me in what she knew of the issue. She told me at lunchtime she was going to go to see some teachers of the Black Studies department. And so the people at the school, Berkeley High, got so intimidated by this piece that they told her that she didn't have to finish her senior year. She can go on to Santa Cruz College. But here again, she went back to New York because her mother needed her help. So that was her first debut. We got a letter. She started a novel at the age of 16, which Carla has preserved. And we got a letter from Ann Pregood of Random House saying that they wanted to publish the novel. She was 16, and she, of course, went to New York. So that's when we realized that she had this terrific talent. Tennessee, Carla and I worked with her. How long was that? About 2 years on Showing Out, Tennessee? Tennessee.
Yes, I'll talk about that later. Yes,
I mean, it began, when did we begin help with going with this Showing Out?
2001,
And then we finished, when was it finished?
2003.
Well, we meet at Starbucks every weekend. And we go over the novel. I'd tell her all the mechanics, the techniques that she had to deliver on, and she was brilliant with this. And so I met Will Belliot, who's now the head of a publishing company in England. And he was the editor at Thunder's Mouth Press at the time. He got knocked out by the novel. And he just sent us he's on the road, but he just sent us an appreciation how he received the novel and how he's impressed by it to Carla. Carla, can you read that? Carla,
Okay, yes. So Will says, Timothy Reed's extraordinary novel, Showing Out, brought to bear many of the traits I associate with the Reed household: fresh truth, humor wherever it may lead, and a memorably unique voice. It was clear from the first paragraph that Timothy's unvarnished and powerful voice, as well as the story she told, was all her own. There was nothing neat or pat or easy about that story. It made you pay attention because it was so fresh and believably unpredictable, yet also so carefully observed. I'm surprised the scenes in the old Times Square Howard Johnsons haven't already been responsible for turning her novel into the next short form streaming phenomenon, which could still very well come to pass. But none of it would have happened without this courageous, funny, beautiful writer who stuck to it through all of her trials, including an earlier version being destroyed. She shares that with Hemingway, in order to give us Showing Out. Thunder's Mouth Press was lucky enough to have it submitted, and once read, it was one of the fastest editorial meetings I've ever been a part of. Everyone said an emphatic yes, and I hope and believe, with her loving father spurring us all on, Timothy's readership will expand with a generation of new readers showing out. A voice like this, so different, so honest, tends not to dim.
Thank you.
Timothy Reed and her stories should and will continue to be heard.
And now we'll have one of the great actresses who has such a variety in performing that she has saved my place. Her, the writing, like I'm in the background on this music, her performance has delivered several of our plays, and she is well known. And most of all, a lot of people are saying they were connected with Black arts. I never heard of these people. Malika is a Black arts with her father, the great poet, is a Black arts pioneer, and she will read a chapter from Showing Out.
Chapter 11. A few hours later, Tiffany awoke to the sound of Calder spilling his guts. She jumped up, put on a robe, and went into the bathroom. The floor was covered with vomit. He was on his knees, nude. His head seemed to be in the toilet. He was swearing and trembling, his body covered with hives. Calder, baby, what's wrong? He looked up. His eyes were pitiful. Then she noticed the needle lying next to the toilet. Please, baby, don't be mad with me. Mad? Mad about what, Calder? She kneeled beside him, comforting him, massaging his back. I took the rent money and what? Calder? What? I spent it on that old evil China white. I was depressed. You paying all the bills. It was doing something to my pride. the Cobra and Coke wasn't enough. His narrative was interrupted by his having to expel a huge glob of black greenish matter into the toilet bowl. I needed something stronger than that. This shit is contaminated, Tiffany. Help me. Baby, I'm gonna die. Call Beth real quick. She did better than that. She called 911. As they were working over him in the ambulance, she held his hand. He was incoherent. She didn't think he even recognized her. When they got to the hospital, he was rushed upstairs while she signed some papers. A few hours later, they led her to a ward where Calder lay behind some curtains asleep. A doctor stood at the foot of his bed, jotting down notes. Your boyfriend had a close call. Do you know where he got the drugs? No. We're going to have to keep him here for at least a week. Keep him until he gets well, doctor. She was furious at him for spending the rent money, but his survival was more important than that. She rationalized his behavior as being the result of his hard life. A mother like hers who'd rather party than attend to her maternal duties. Bad schools, bad company, few choices, limited goals. There was another voice, though, saying the nigga's just evil. Her psychologist would talk about root causes, but she knew that evil was in the world and the devil was loose. How did she know? His agent, Hattie, was constantly talking to her. Back at the apartment, she started cleaning up the mess and got ready for work. She'd have to do overtime to pay the hospital bills. She wondered where Calder had gotten the drugs. She put on some lacy white socks she picked up at a secondhand shop on East 7th Street in the East Village. She enjoyed wearing them with her golden high heels. She checked herself out in the mirror. It was an antique, large and round with a gold frame. Tiffany's mother had given it to her when she turned 30. Before Violet became severely addicted to alcohol, she had good taste. Tiffany thought maybe that was the one nice thing her mother had passed on to her. And Tiffany spent a fortune on clothes. She tried to convince herself that it was because she was in show business, but the real reason was that as a child, she hardly ever had any. Her mother didn't give a bang about budgeting. When them checks came, it seemed that the whole neighborhood of Bed-Stuy partied. Tiffany had to wear hand-me-down outfits, and sometimes she had no shoes at all. Her mother would leave her alone for days on end, and she'd have to fend for herself with whomever they were living with at the time. When she got older, she became the mother and Violet the daughter. Before leaving the apartment, Tiffany emptied all the 6 packs of Cobra into the toilet. The phone rang. It was Apacharya. What you doing, hon? Tiffany could hear traffic noise in the background. Apacharya was in the streets. I'm cleaning up the place. Calder had to go to Beth Israel, some bad drugs. When are you going to cut that chump loose, Tiffany? He ain't doing nothing but burning you. Nigga think he cute. He needs help, Apacharia. He'll get better. It'll be like old times when we first met. You'll see. You're kidding yourself, Tiff. You should have left that nigga when he slapped you the first time. He was depressed. Whatever. Listen, Tiff. I'm over here at Patricia Fields shopping up a storm, girl. I bought this red silk flapper spaghetti strap dress with fringe. It's roaring 20s style. You remember that black skirt I was dying for? I bought it. Child, I also bought a dark brown wig. Paid $300 for that. I got a marble cigarette holder like the one Georgia has. What happened to you the other night? Me and Calder had a fight. I couldn't come in with my face swollen. I hung out with Melanie. She looking rough these days. She's sick, Apacharia. You coming tonight? Have to. Calder spent the rent money, and who's gonna pay the hospital bills? Tiffany, how long you gonna put up with that shit? Hold on a minute, Pacha. I need a cigarette. Tiffany fetched a Capri and returned to her seat in the kitchen, crossed her legs and lit up. I love him, Pacha. There was silence for a moment. I had this pizza with mushrooms on top, Tiffany. Another silence. Then they both giggled. It was so good. I hope Papa doesn't give me a lousy booth, Tiffany said. I get tired of his playing mind games with the girls. I think he's racist, even if he is Black, or at least half Black. What other reason would there be for him giving all these white girls, no matter how ugly, the upstairs booths, while the Black and Jamaican girls work downstairs? Tiff, I'm auditioning for this play. It's about Bessie Smith. Pacha always changed the subject when Papa's name came up. Maybe it was because among the Black girls, she got the prize booths. She got away with things the other girls would be fired for. She also did some part-time secretarial work for Peeps. Papa even allowed her to cash checks for the house. When she started, she only planned to work at Peeps for a summer, making tuition for her third year college. But the money was so good, she didn't go back to school. Who? You never heard of Bessie Smith? No. Who was she? She was the famous blues singer. She had a taste for lousy men. Don't we all? Tiffany said under her breath. I can't hear you, Tiff. The traffic noise was drowning out their conversation. Look, Tiff, we can get together after the shows.
Oh, thank you very much. It was a brilliant reading. Thank you. Very good. Ron, tell me some of the ideas you had when you adapted this novel for the stage.
But Ish, it wasn't easy, you know, with the wonderful writing that Timothy had written in the novel. How do you take a piece of written work like that and cut it up to put it on stage? You know, I think I must have told you, and this is it's going to be difficult to do because it was just the writing was just too beautiful. You know, all those wonderful words. But then realization popped in, and I had to put on that adaptation mindset, and I was able to take her words because they were colorful words, and that was really the directions of for the director, which was myself, to take on in the writing, in the placement of the play, because as Miss Iman was reading, she said some wonderful words, and those words were made into images that were developed in the character and the characterization on the stage. So it was, like I said, it wasn't easy, but it was a treat, a true treat to take this great writer, one of the great writers. Tom Southern compared her to Langston Hughes and all the great writers, as you know, because of the way she wrote this story, and it was so real because she lived it, one thing, but because she had written it in such a way that it was, you could actually sit there and visualize those clubs. You can visualize these women in the club and the humanity that she brought out in their lives, as well as herself, you know, being in the schizophrenia dilemma. So we were seeing all those images, and it was wonderful to bring out the schizophrenia within the character in the play. We were able to take it and add other elements to the production of video, the videotapes. So we went around and we taped the 42nd Street peep show clubs and outside, her getting into the cab, going to the hospital. I remember one night we were going to Bellevue Hospital to take that shot. And we go in there with the camera and everything. We go in there with the camera, and the guy says, the security guy said, "What are you doing?" I said, "We're going to just shoot a little bit for this play we're doing, showing out." I said, no, you can't do that. So we had to take it back to Brooklyn, getting way in there, take it back to Brooklyn to a hospital. And we walked in there like we were doing undercover stuff. And lo and behold, you look around, you see people with their cell phones just taking pictures and everything. And so we ended up just getting a good shot, and that was part of the play also, her waiting in the waiting room to go see Calder in the hospital. And it's so many colorful moments that she brought about out in the play. So it was truly, thank you for bringing it to me and trusting me with your daughter's work, you know. And when you first brought it to me, I was like, you want me to what-ish? A story of a woman in the peep show business, and you want me to adapt this and put this on stage at the New Eureka Poets Cafe? It was kind of interesting. And I said, you know, anything you bring to me, I'm ready to go with it. But I did it, and I'm so glad I did, because I got to know your daughter and the humanity that was in her, even with the sickness that she was bearing. But this was a beautiful spirit and a truly talented writer, you know, and I thank you so very much for that.
Well, thank you. You wanted to sing a song?
I want to dedicate this song to her. No complaints and no regrets. I still believe in chasing dreams and placing bets. For I have learned in life, all you give is all you get. So you give it all you got. I've had my share, drank my fill, and even though I'm satisfied, I'm hungry still. The sea was down the road, beyond the hill, and do it all again. So here's to life and every joy it brings. Here's to life, the dreamers and their dreams. May all your storms be weathered and all that's good get better. Here's to life. Here's to love. Here's to you, Timothy Reed in heaven, on your heavenly high. Here's to you.
Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you, Ish.
Christina Wade, who was the star of Showing Out, will now make a statement. We interviewed her earlier. Happy birthday, Christina.
Okay, the first question is,
When did you first hear about the play showing out?
Oh my gosh. I had just pretty much gotten to the city as a very young actor. And so I was doing a lot of backstage auditions. When you would send in your picture, back then you would mail in your picture for the role you wanted to do. And if someone was interested, they would call you. And I somehow heard about showing out being cast, but it was definitely through backstage. And so I went to the theater, and there were a bunch of us. There were a bunch of us girls, and we auditioned. And yeah, I got the role. I was really surprised that I got it because back then, no, because back then, I think my confidence just wasn't what it is now. I was a kid. So I was like, oh my God. Well, this is it. Here we go. But yeah, it was through backstage, and that's how I heard about it.
And how many weeks of rehearsals were there?
Oh my gosh, a lot. I want to say at least a month. Like, yeah, it was about a month, at least 3 weeks.
And
a nice long rehearsal, which I love.
What did you think of the script?
I thought the script was compelling. I thought, the story was like very, very emotional. Like a lot of the things that my character was going through was merely to survive in the world, and she was dealing with so many things, including mental illness and like a lot of things where, like she really was just doing the best she could in the way that she knew how to survive and to have some kind of semblance of a life. And it didn't always work out for her. She didn't always make the best choices, but I could appreciate that every choice she made was a choice towards survival.
What do you mean by not the best choices?
Well, like her choice in men and all of that was, like she didn't always make the best choices in terms of that, but I still think that she was doing her best to survive.
Okay. You're from Gabon?
I am from the Gambia.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
We're in America. There are 54 countries in Africa. We get them all. We only
Yeah.
Do you know women in that kind of, I mean, maybe you were a child when you left, but do you know of women in that kind of situation there?
Oh, I'm sure there are. I mean, do I know any personally? I do not know any personally, but I mean, we're talking about the scope of humanity, right? Yeah. So within the scope of humanity, it really doesn't matter where you are. People have their struggles to bear. It doesn't matter that you are from here or from Africa or Europe or, it really doesn't matter, because I think any human being who is going through something very difficult and trying to find their way can be from anywhere.
What was the rapport among the women in the play? How'd you guys get along? Oh,
like the actors, us actors, we got along pretty well. I would say, yeah, I can remember the young lady that played like my right-hand girl, and I'm forgetting in the play, I'm forgetting her name right now. I'm so sorry, but she was so talented and so cool. The guys were also pretty cool. It was a good cast. It was a solid cast. I think we worked really well together.
Yeah, the actor,
from what I could remember.
The actor who played the manager of the club is deceased.
I heard about that.
So What was the audience reaction to the story? Like, was there empathy for the plight of the women on stage, or?
Absolutely there was. I mean, I remember people coming up to me and just saying things like, I understand. I have my moments like that. You know, like I've been through similar things, maybe not the exact same thing, but I have my version of stuff that I've been through in my life that I can relate to your story. I had a lot of that afterwards.
Very good. Thank you, Christina. And now,
Well, Ish would like to just say that the actor who played the manager of the club was Max Mann, and he was nominated for an Adolco Award for that performance. So that was also, her works was also an Adolco nominated play also for the Off-Broadway in Manhattan.
yeah, I might mention that the audience, you can see both Malika and Rome at YouTube, a reading from my new play, The Slave Who Loved Caviar. It's at YouTube. We kept it up. Okay, now we'll have an excerpt from Showing Up.
Don't argue with me, girl. What is? Listen, I studied at Lawrence P. Neal Community College. And before I dropped out to give birth to my baby Christopher, I read books about slavery. And you know this must be what it was like on the plantation. Black women giving up things so that white and black men could be happy.
What happened?
Black women giving up things so that white and black men could be happy. White man forced to be their concubine. Black man ran us for company. We had to raise the children of both, take care of the plantation, and take care of these white women who, after emancipation, these white women left to themselves didn't even know how to fry an egg. The independent Scarlett O'Hara. That was Margaret Mitchell's fantasy.
Oh, Gone with the Wind. I like that.
And so you see, girls, we continue the tradition.
Well, you know what, Pasha, you might be right, but I do not see myself as no slave. Ain't no slave making money like we are. Okay?
Tiffany, could you please tell them? Now she knows. She went to one of them private schools when she lived with her daddy. Explain. Aren't we like slaves?
Pacha's right the way I see it.
Hello.
Papa Pooh gets his 10%, and then when I get home, Porter's got his hands stretched out. Now he wants me to give him money for his cell phone bill. For what? It's not like he got somebody important who needs to reach him. I work to pay his bills, feed him, and keep him stocked in Cold Rush. Cooking him pork chops after work till 5 a.m., satisfying his enormous sexual needs. He thinks that he's such a great lover, that fucking him is some big deal. Come home, baby. I'm gonna give you some big man. Big man. That's what he calls it? That's what he calls it. But like most men, he don't know how to work it in the bedroom. I read somewhere that the majority of women hated sex. They go on moaning and yelping as though they enjoy it.
I don't know about most women, but I sure as hell enjoy myself when I'm following my boyfriend. Honey, if this Colder ain't doing his duty, why are you giving the booty?
Girl, you don't know.
What was that right?
You don't know.
Break it down, honey.
Being with him at first was exciting and lovely. First 6 months, we'd go to shows, take long walks in Central Park, go to punk clubs in the East Village, jazz clubs in the West. We'd even do corny things like take a boat cruise around Manhattan Island, ride horse and buggy through Central Park. Things turned nasty after a visit from his mother, Carletta. She lives in California. Whatever went on between the two of them during her visit, his decline set in shortly afterward. He remained in the apartment for days drinking Cobra beer after being sober for 2 years.
That's a shame.
Lost his bouncer job. He and his mother had quarreled about what he never said.
Well, Tiffany, It sounds like this nigga has a problem with his mom. How'd you drop the bitch? What are you afraid what he might do if you, his meal ticket, up and left? Are you afraid to be alone with the voices? I know what it is. It's because he told you you were beautiful.
Okay.
Woo,
Okay.
showing out, boy. I tell you, that was something else.
Now, Carla, would you read the first paragraph of the review of the play written by the great writer, sports writer, theater critic, Herb Boyd, that appeared in the Amsterdam News?
This was published May 16th, the 22nd issue of 2002. First paragraph. Timothy Reed showing out as raw, gritty, raunchy, and risque. The play, directed and adapted from the novel by Rome Neal, pulls no punches and takes no prisoners as it graphically presents the seedy, steamy world of Black women in the peep show business. It's a fast-paced, in-your-face slice of life of such brutal intensity that only someone who has careened through it could authenticate.
Excellent, very good. Okay, now I think Malika Iman will read a section from her unpublished novel. And I just want to say this is going to sound weird, but 3 days after her death, Timothy visited me, and she was trying to say something to me. And I asked the great psychic, Mary Brown, author of the bestseller, Life After Death, and I think she's in on this, she's in the audience here. And I said, what does that mean? She had to guide me through this. And she said, well, she explained what was going on. And then I got a call from Timothy. And I said, Timothy, you're dead. Let me talk to your husband. She hung up. So I said, Mary, what is going on here? And Mary said that she wanted to tell me that we could take liberty in editing her book. So she's still watching things even after death. And, you know, my mother was a great psychic. I could never get away with anything. Always knew what I was up to, and she could predict things, and I stopped doubting her abilities. And so we're still working with this. And people say, well, Mary Brown told me details of the autopsy that she couldn't possibly know. And that reminded me of my mother when she had her book party. She spent the first part of the party talking about her book, and the second part giving messages to the audience from their dead relatives. So who knows? I mean, I've been to college and stuff, you think you know everything, but there are things that we don't know. Okay, now Malika, would you read that's from the second novel? Thank you.
Yes. One night, she and Felipe went to a party given by a West Indian co-worker. The weather was bitter cold. There was West Indian food, pickled cow's head, codfish and roti, Jamaican rice, goat stew, West Indian jambalaya, peas, beans, shrimp, sausage, okra, mushrooms, all different kinds of wine, whiskey, Bacardi, rum, sparkling apple cider, fruit punch that was spiked. The host, Khadija, was pleased. People were laughing, smoking reefer and drinking. Couples were dancing West Indian and American dances, the mambo, the cha-cha-cha, the calypso, the bump, the hustle, and some people were breakdancing. Felipe even breakdanced and drank Bacardi straight, even though he didn't drink that much. Tiffany was sitting down on a couch eating cow's head, cow's stomach, when Khadijah called Tiffany into the kitchen. She took her to the sink area away from some of the people who were coming into the kitchen and fetching Diet Coke, Sprite, Pepsi, ginger ale, and other sodas that were in a cooler. Khadijah wore dreads, had very full features, and was heavyset with huge breasts. She didn't wear makeup because of her Muslim religion. She said, but nobody saw her praying to Mecca 5 times a day. She liked to drink. She was sipping from a Bacardi. Tiffany knew something was up because her smile was a dead giveaway. You know, man, your boyfriend is a dumb cheater. What's going on? Tell me what's going on, Tiffany said. You better have a drink first. She fixed Tiffany a glass of Bacardi on the rocks. He's a cheating bastard, she said, shaking her head in pity this time. Is he playing me dirty behind my back, Tiffany asked. Who is the bitch? I have her telephone number. You want to come into the bedroom and call her? Tell me who it is. Robin. Tiffany was hurt and belittled. This woman was fat, light-skinned with green eyes. Her legs and hands were chubby. She wore cheap polyester dresses. She was a Puerto Rican woman who spoke very little English. Not only are they fucking, but she's pregnant with this baby, Khadijah said. What? I went with her when she got the blood tests. It's his. If her husband finds out, he'll kill her. Call that bitch and tell her to lay off your man. Her wicked grin appeared. They went into Khadijah's bedroom. As they passed the living room to get there, she glanced at the man who had betrayed her. Felipe. He was partying down. He was doing the limbo, a glass in his hand, and as a crowd had gathered around him, clapping their hands. The bedroom had gold curtains, cable TV, a full-size bed with a big finger hut comforter. On the wall were pictures of Marcus Garvey, who was probably a cheater too, she thought. Khadijah gave her the number. Call her and fight for your man. She was grinning. You want another drink? Tiffany hadn't realized that she gulped the drink down so quickly. She nodded. Khadijah left the bedroom. Tiffany dialed the number. The alcohol had made her confident. Hola, ¿cómo está? A man answered. Gruffly, sounded as though he'd been drinking. Hola, can I speak with Robin? Sí, uno momento. Robin, come to the phone. Tiffany could hear loud Spanish music. Sounded like some Spanish ballad being played. Tiffany said, yo, Robin, what's the dealio? This is Tiffany, Felipe's woman. He could feel Robin's panic through the line. Listen up, stay away from my man. Her tongue was heavy and she stuttered a bit. Yes, sí. Yo, you don't want me to come over and kick your ass? Yes, no, cabres. Watch your back, bitch. I'll come over and stomp that bambino out of your stomach. Yes, sí. I don't think your husband would like to know that you are fucking my husband. All right, all right. Tiffany heard her husband say something in Spanish. I got to go, she said. Khadijah bought her another drink. She drank it down and began to cry. Khadijah pretended to comfort her. They passed Felipe on their way, heading toward the kitchen. He was with some friends. He was talking loud, which wasn't like him. Tiffany picked up a drink and started toward the living room. Khadijah tried to restrain her. She walked up to where Felipe was standing and threw the drink into his face. He smacked her hard. The people in the room gathered around them. She slapped him back and said, "You know it's quits. I want you out of my apartment by tomorrow morning. Go with that female Robin." "Mommy, what are you talking about? What's the matter?" "You know what I'm talking about, motherfucker. Don't make a scene. Don't make a scene. We're leaving." He grabbed her elbow. She pulled it away. "Get your hands off me." He started to slap her again, but stopped when a Black man came to her rescue. He was large, wearing waist-length dreads and an ankle-length African robe. "You like to hit women? Hit me. I'll kick your Puerto Rican ass. Leave the sister alone." Felipe turned red and backed off. The brother studied Tiffany for a moment. The music had stopped and the people had quit their dancing. "That'll teach you to be with your own kind," he said, grabbing his coat and leaving the party with a disgusted look. "Leave that bitch alone. She ain't nothing but stinking drunk," one of Felipe's friends said. Tiffany assaulted Felipe again. She began punching him in the chest. "I hate you. I hate you, you cheating son of a bitch. Get out of my fucking life. I'm gonna have the fucking locks changed." Khadijah was taking it all in, laughing. She sided with Felipe. "She's drunk. Let her go home and sleep it off," Khadijah said. Her grin was hateful, mocking, wicked.
Thank you, Malika. That's very powerful reading. Brilliant, beautiful reading. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Now, do we have Armando here? And or Georgia Fraser? Do we have those two here? Okay, well, I have a statement. Timothy lived with us in California on and off. And when I went to New York, I was in contact with her. 1999, we got a call from a detective who said he found Timothy wandering the streets, a scene that is explicitly described in her unpublished novel. Instead of warehousing her, which is how those whose perception of reality is different, he took her to Beth Israel Hospital, where she began her long road to recovery, as much a recovery that's possible for those with schizophrenia. Beginning with her time in Beth Israel until her death this year, she didn't have a drink. That's over 20 years. And a decade ago, she stopped smoking. We brought her to California after a stay at Beth Israel, where she began her rehab at Chrysalis House, and then the Friendly Manor, Mandela House, and then the late Michael Lange, who acted in my plays and directed one of them, was the manager of the Alice Arts Hotel, a residency and rehearsal place for artists. Michael put her at the head of the list so that she could reside there. She began classes at Vista College, where she met her future husband, and you saw photos of them together on their wedding day and some other photos at the slideshow. And Alexander Hampton. When I told two highly educated people that they both were schizophrenic, they laughed. There's nothing funny about schizophrenia. Timothy would call me sometimes daily about the voices that were berating her. As soon as she thought they'd left, they'd return. There were episodes that became so bad that we had to take her to the psychiatric ward of Alta Bates Hospital. Luckily, Timothy had a support system beginning with the Puerto Rican cop who took her to the hospital, and a husband who was zealously devoted to her. Alexander Hampton was really devoted to her. And instead of the men in New York who exploited her, one of them destroyed her manuscript, and it took 2 years to reconstruct it. But because of her gifts that she exhibited at an early age, she was able to tell her story. And telling her story, she told stories of thousands who suffered as she did. She read from her novel at a convention of Black psychiatrists and received a standing ovation. I told her psychiatrist that the drug Zyprexa was dangerous, but he knew more than I did. Eli Lilly finally admitted that they knew it was dangerous, causing weight gain and diabetes before they put it out on the market. I even wrote an article about this drug, and the pharmaceutical, the company, the scandal, which was a criminal operation, because they finally came and admitted that they knew the side effects of this drug before they put it on the market. And I used to tease Timothy. I said, your psychiatrist is probably getting a kickback from the pharmaceutical industry. I don't know about that, because I know they do get kickbacks. Another thing I learned in my study of schizophrenia was that Black patients, so-called people who have schizophrenia, are given drugs, while white patients are given talk therapy. So they load, I don't know, she's taking 5 drugs a day, different kinds of things, Paxil, all kinds of stuff. So what they do is they not only load Black patients up with these drugs instead of talk therapy, they experiment with new drugs on Black and brown patients. So their criminal penalty was $6,000 to every patient. So they gave Timothy $6,000. Now, was her premature birth that made her prone to getting schizophrenia? That's one study. Was it genetic? Because my grandmother had it. And because in those days, mental illness was considered such a stigma, nobody talked about it. So I didn't realize that it was schizophrenia until my mother told me the symptoms, that she was hearing voices and the voices were berating her. There's evidence that it was present in her mother's family. So among the mysteries that have to be solved is why the voices present in America are hostile and nagging. And what these voices do, they really mess with your self-esteem. And why voices in African societies are positive. Why the voices in African societies are positive, and why the voices in American society are negative. And 2 women, psychiatrists, both of whom suffered from bipolar mental problems, they said American psychiatrists went to visit a nomadic tribe in Africa where the schizophrenic among the tribe was honored, was revered. The American psychiatrists diagnosed him as schizophrenic, so this nomadic tribe left him behind, and he possibly died. Also heard from an African psychiatrist in Paris the same thing. that in African societies, I think African people admire difference. So for example, the Egyptians admire people who are vertically challenged because they were great dancers. So that's something to look at. So maybe the two books that Timothy left will help to solve this mystery. And now, what's next? One more thing. You know, Timothy and I had our ups and downs. We both are strong-willed, you know, but she thanked us every day from bringing her from New York in a desperate situation she found herself in. So we, you know, we sometimes, we had very loving conversations. And the final conversation, thanks to Tennessee, was very loving. And we were talking about getting her some glasses because she had eye surgeries because of the diabetes. So Tennessee, and that was the last conversation we had. She died the next day. Okay, Tennessee has some comments.
Thank you.
Okay,
so my wasn't really my first memory, but when I was born in February of 1977, Timothy was living with my parents. At that time, she was 16 and she was going to Berkeley High School. And when I was 5 months old, my mother and I went to Japan for a month for my mother to do dance performances. And when we came back, Timothy had moved back to Brooklyn to be with her mother. I didn't see her again until kindergarten or first grade. And she was 22 or 23. She was addicted to Ativan, which is a medication that people take for seizures, anxiety, and insomnia. Because she wasn't diagnosed with schizophrenia yet, she wasn't diagnosed until she was 28. At that time, she was at a recovery home here. I vaguely remember her dropping her off and waving goodbye to her. And then she returned to Brooklyn after she left that recovery home. I didn't see her again for another 10 years. February 1993, I was almost 16 and a sophomore in high school. She was 32. It was at a book party at the apartment of our father's literary agent. My mother's oldest sister and her husband were there, and so was one of our father's brothers and stepmother. I remember hanging out with Timothy and a friend of hers at the party. Timothy and I are huge introverts for the most part. So we were at a party together, we'd hang out with each other in a corner. I saw her again in February 1996. I was almost 19 and a college freshman. Timothy was 35. We were in New York City again. We all went out to dinner together. I don't remember the restaurant or what our conversations were about, but I remember it being pleasant. She was working as a peep show dancer in Times Square, a place she was to call Peep's Castle in her first novel. I saw Timothy again about 16 months later, which would be June of 1997. I was helping out our late grandmother in Buffalo, who recently had just major heart surgery. I was 20 and Timothy was 36. She came up to Buffalo for the weekend because her grandmother was turning 80. She and our grandmother had their differences from stuff that happened before I was born, but they got along for the most part. She moved out here permanently on March 5th, 1999, and began to recover from her alcohol addiction. I had just turned 22 and Timothy was 38. I remember picking her up at SFO. She lived with my parents for a few months. Then in May or June of that year, she moved to Chrysalis, a recovery program in Oakland. She graduated from there a year later and then went to Friendly Manor, another recovery program which was further downtown. For the first 2 years she was here, I barely saw her because I was living on campus. And the summer that she graduated from Chrysalis, I was studying abroad in England. A few months after I graduated from Cal in 2001, Timothy met her future husband, Alexander Hampton. They met at Vista College, either in a Spanish class or a computer class. She was living in another recovery house called the Bonita House, which was a mile west of the Cal campus. She was beginning to struggle in the recovery homes. I think having Alex around helped her. Plus, she was in the midst of working on her first novel, Showing Out. She wrote her chapters in longhand and I would type them up. Then we would meet her each weekend and interview her to build the chapters out further, and I would record her answers on a cassette tape. Everything became part of the novel. I think us bringing her to her house to have these sessions helped her because she got a break from the people in the recovery home. She would share her work in progress at AA meetings. After the novel was published in 2003, she would sell all her books at the meeting too. In the fall of 2002, she transferred to the Mandela House in Richmond. A year later, towards the end of 2003, the symptoms of type 2 diabetes came along, probably from all the meds she was on and the fact that she was gaining weight. Instead of noticing that the symptoms such as extreme thirst and frequent urination were red flags waving in their faces, the program directors kicked her out. She stayed at a hotel near UC Berkeley for a week, and then she went to the Alice Art Center in Oakland, where she lived until her marriage to Alex Hampton in June of 2007. When she permanently moved in with Alex, she changed for the better because she struggled living in large groups and she struggled living on her own. He helped stabilize her and got her to her appointments on time. From the fall of 2009 to the spring of 2012, we helped her work on her second novel, Split in Two. Just like we did with Showing Out, we met with her at a restaurant or coffee shop every weekend. I noticed that it seemed to lighten her mood. She was still attending AA meetings regularly. She was proud that she remained free from her alcohol addiction until the end of her life. From 2012 on, we got together occasionally. Sometimes we didn't get along, like the period between the fall of 2016 and the fall of 2018, which happens, but I was there for her the last 2.5 years of her life. The last time I saw her was between Thanksgiving and Christmas of 2020. I could tell she was physically struggling that day, but we didn't realize how sick she was. The conversation we had with her, the last one was on February 4th, 2021, when we said we would take her to the university to get her eyes checked. Then we got the shocking call the next day.
Thanks, Tennessee. We'll end with a song from Bodiva, the great Haitian poet. Bodiva.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Besoin cahier pour si un homme voici un homme pour m'entrer dans son poêle, pour me bailler la vérité. Besoin cahier pour si un homme voici un homme pour m'entrer dans son poêle, pour me bailler la vérité. Si ya ya, oi, rele, oi. Si ya ya, oi, mrele, oi. Si ya ya, monte. Ça capote chay ici bas, pour l'ailler. Oi, oi, oi. Si ya ya, monte. Ça capote chay ici bas, pour l'ailler. Oi, oi, oi. I need a book to sign my name. I'll sign my name, then enter through those gates so I can give the truth. I need a book to sign my name. I'll sign my name, then enter through those gates so I can give the truth. Timothy, woy, we cry, oh. Timothy, woy, we cry, oh. Timothy, rise up, who'll carry the load down below. Rank and file, woy, woy, woy. Timothy, rise up, who will carry the load down below. Rank and file, woy, woy, woy. Timothy, rise up.
Odiva, thank you. It's wonderful. Thank you. Great. We got a few more minutes. Does anybody in the audience want to ask a question? Is there anybody who wants to talk? Anybody? Okay, that will end the session. This has been wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody who cooperated. And we're very grateful to your participation. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.